All right, good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see all of you virtually. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon to dive into this wonderful and exciting world of glass and art. My name is Sarah, and I'm from Synergraphic Design. We've been in Singapore loving glass art for 35 years now. Started since 1986, and I'm really happy to be here today to speak with you. Now, before I begin, I would like all of us to just pause and think for a moment. What comes to your mind when I mention the word glass? Perhaps you thought about your window, your shower screen, or maybe your wine glasses, your whiskey glasses, your vases, your eyeglasses, like what I'm wearing, your phone, your TV screens. I think for many of us, without realizing it, glass has become such an everyday material that we often take for granted. And still, there is not very much that you know about it. So today, I'd like to take you on a journey in glass, specifically within the realm of space and art. How has glass evolved over the years? What are some key technologies being used today? What are some products and techniques that you can now consider in your designs, whether for furniture or interior architectural use? These are the things that we want to look at today, and the purpose of the next hour is really to inspire you to new possibilities in design and creation with the medium, and hopefully it will begin to move you to transform more spaces with glass and art. The sense I get is that all of us are actually very familiar already with glass because it is all around us. And at the same time, there still seems to be some kind of fear, some mystery around glass with common questions that I always hear like, what is tempered glass? When will it break? Why is it so thin? Why is it so thick? So I'm really excited to talk with you today because even though it's just one material, glass, there is still so much breadth and depth yet to be discovered or talked about. Throw in one more element, art, and you've got a lot more to explore. So I thought it would be helpful to start our journey from the beginning. Now, glass has been around since about 3600 in Egypt, 3600 BC in Egypt. It's an ancient material, and at the time, the dominant glass making technique was called core forming, and that would enable you to create vessels like what you see in the slide. Then in Venice, the blown glass technique was invented. That was a key discovery that enabled the production of plate glass that now can be used for windows. So you can imagine that up until then, glass was not even a medium used for windows. Windows were just openings that had wooden panels that opened and closed. And the glass used at this time for windows was limited. You can only blow very small sized panels. And you can see from the photo that there's this spiral design in it. That's because it was all handmade, so it cannot be fully flat. And it was only during the time of industrialization in the 1800s that glass became more commonplace. Mass production of glass bottles were now possible with machinery, and only more recently in 1950s, a major invention took place, that is the float glass process, which enabled the mass production of glass sheets. And because of this, large-scale production of glass sheets and mirrors were now possible, and they became used more and more for buildings. So now many buildings have entire facades made out of glass because the sheet sizes are becoming larger and larger with more interesting curved shapes as well. So, it really wasn't until very recently that glass is as we know it today. And right now, glass is so much a part of our lives. It's an everyday material that's still being developed and researched. And why is it such a basic material in our lives? Because of its properties. It is food safe, very strong, durable, it doesn't rust, and contrary to popular belief, it's even cheaper than plastic sometimes. And other than the fact that it's so functional and so much possibilities for mass production, why is it also such a captivating medium for artists and designers? It is because of its many inherent ironies. It is stiff, yet it looks so fluid. If you've not seen the Chihuli Glass and Bloom exhibition at Gardens by the Bay in Singapore, please do check it out. We also have our workshop there, just a little advertisement over here. And another beautiful irony about glass is that we all know it to be so fragile, we're so scared of it. And yet it's a material that's so strong, as you can see in churches where stained glass panels which are barriers between the outside and the inside. They have, been there for centuries and they are still there. So it is very strong. Glass is also transparent, completely transparent, yet at the very same time, it's reflective. It can be fully opaque as well. So glass has so much potential for artists and designers. And I thought it would be good to look at two specific applications to understand how glass techniques have evolved in more recent times. We're going to look at the window and the partition as two applications. So the function of a glass window, first and foremost, is to provide a physical barrier between the exterior and the interior while allowing light to come through. And similar to the window, a glass partition's function is to physically divide the interior space while maintaining the visual openness of the space. So for the sake of discussion, let's imagine that we are looking to create the mood or environment of the bamboo forest in these two applications. What are some ways that we could do this in glass? In the past, in order for you to put a design or graphic on a panel of glass, you would either have to paint it by hand, like what you see on the right. Instead of canvas, you are now painting on glass as your medium. Or you would have to cut different pieces of glass and piece it together, like what you see on the left. In this case, we call this technique traditional leaded stained glass, like what you see in churches. These panels are both functional and decorative because as a window, it acts as a barrier, yet it also provides privacy and art for the space. And as a partition, it also divides the space, yet allows sufficient light to come in and also provides an art for the space. And then you had sand carving and etching, which were techniques that we used a lot in the 1980s and 90s. So whatever graphic you had, you could engrave it onto the panel. With sand carving, you are basically really carving or etching into the glass using sand. You can get different depths, textures, and shadows. Within this just one technique, you can see how a bamboo forest was created, which was what we did for UOB Plaza in 1993. It was one of our first major works for the large number of decorative panels that used just this one technique. To get your bamboo forest theme, you could also create a mold and press your glass on it on an industrial scale, usually a metal mold, like the one you see on your left, which gives you a lot of the pattern glass, like the reeded glass, as you know it today. Or you could also use a kiln to form your bamboo design. You can create a mold, you lay your flat glass on it, you put it into the kiln, it gets heated up to a point of melting temperature, and then it will slump to take on the shape of your mold. So the resulting glass would have more of a sculptural form and profile to it. Then things like color, additional finishing can be added on after that. And then printing technology and lamination technology was invented. Now your graphics, whether it's a photograph or illustration of any kind, you can print it directly onto glass. Or you could print it on film and then laminate it between glass. So this example shows you how your bamboo forest can be fully printed and installed as panels in the space. This was done for UOB Privilege Banking in Singapore. And even the reception counter that you see is made of layers of glass stacked into a 3D form. Everything that you've just seen are flat glass panels. But when you want to create your bamboo forest, you could, of course, consider using things like blown glass or cast glass. These are other techniques to install it within the space so that you get actual sculptural 3D forms in the space. How would a bamboo forest possibly look, if we combine techniques? And here's one possibility in our office space, where you have graphics broken up into layers. Some are sand carved, some are just slightly frosted, and then some of the bamboo strips are also created in kind of like a 2.5D profile using the layered glass and UV glued together. So what I showed you were really just a sample of different techniques available in glass, and that will give you very different interpretations of a bamboo forest theme in glass. And at Synergraphic, we've always been very passionate about discovering even more fluidities in the material, particularly by simply combining traditional and modern techniques and using the vast amount of materials available to us. I'd like to spotlight one of our favorite combination of techniques, that is sandblasting and printing and lamination. We want to share more about this with you through a few case studies, and it's also what we've done for our installation at SIDFest, if you've yet to check it out. So this case study is a feature window done for private residents in Singapore. This is a condo unit on the ground floor, and that area that you see is the dining area. So when you first move in, the window is a plain window, which means that when the blinds are up, you can see outside, and people who are outside can also see you. So the intention was to create the illusion of a misty willow tree kind of gently swaying outside your window. And what we wanted was to turn this purely functional window into one that also had art or decoration on it. Once we had a concept and layout, the graphic layout sorted, then we were faced with the challenge of very, very different lighting conditions. It looked very different in the day and very different at night when the blinds come down. And in this picture, you can already see that the graphic below, which is the daylight condition, looks very different from when the blinds are halfway coming down. And the parts that are sand carved, which are below, the white parts that are sand carved, they stand out very strongly because of the daylight that's reflected. But once the blinds come down, you'll see that all the white parts are entirely lost. And if we only used one technique, which is sand carving, the whole feature would not stand through all different lighting conditions. So here is a better visual for you to see. Day looks like on the left, and on the nighttime conditions on the right. Printing on glass is really very different from printing on paper because glass is a transparent medium. So whatever you see on your screen, however you plan it, it will look very different when it's printed out. So a lot of time is actually spent on the back and forth process of adjusting the graphic and printing just to get the right amount of opacities and densities. So here is a picture where you can see we do many rounds of testing for the different layers, which layer is going to be sand carved, which is going to be printed, and how dense, how much opacity. And here you can see how some layers are carved, and the back, even the shadows of the leaves are printed. Yeah. So the same combination of techniques, which is printing and sand carving, we used to interpret the line work of Sarah Chong, who was the commissioned illustrator for Gardens by the Bay's feature wall. If you are wondering where this is at the Cloud Forest, kind of right at the end, just when you're about to exit. It's a 16-meter long wall and in 3 layers of laminated glass. So for this feature, it was also a process of working very closely with the artists to determine which sections are going to be printed, which sections will be sand carved, which are going to be lightly sandblasted, which one goes in the front, which one goes in the back, in order for the overall graphic to stand out in the lighting conditions. And we also have a picture on the right, which shows you that the sand carving process is all done manually by our craftsmen. And you can see that only some parts are removed, right? Because you have to think of it in a negative, depending on which ones you want to sculpt or carve out more. I think why we really love this combination of techniques in particular is really because of how it's able to bring out the beauty of the material of glass that we find that other materials are not so much able to do so. What we're talking about is that duality of transparency, reflectivity, softness, and hardness all at once. And this was what we set out to achieve with our installation for SIDFest. It's called Kasumi Shizuku. I'm going to talk about this for a little bit because we love how this concept, when you are able to apply it as doors or dividers in any space, it is able to transform your space. So the name of this installation is Kasumi Shizuku. Kasumi is mist in Japanese and Shizuku is droplets, both referring to water in different states. How would you capture these states of water in graphical form in glass? How would it be possible to capture this one moment in time permanently as if it were really there, or maybe not quite there? Creating this work that had just the right amount of subtlety is much harder than it looks. In fact, it's often easier to print something bold and loud, but to get just the right amount of opacity and density from both techniques together is quite difficult. So I'll show you what happened for this work. So Yumi architects first started by drawing on paper using calligraphy ink on a 1:1 scale. This was then scanned into a digital format, and then a mathematical algorithm was developed to create the mist and to model the way that water would behave in order for it to look natural. Then after test printing and sandblasting a few rounds, then we proceeded with the actual fabrication. The artwork was intentionally designed to be in layers. So some layers are printed, some are sandblasted. And each panel also had an angled edge so that it could be formed in this zigzag layout, which had to be taken into consideration when preparing the graphic. This picture that you see here is of our craftsmen doing the sandblasting. And the result is beautiful. You will notice that the installation changes with the lighting conditions because it stands right below the skylight. And as the sun moves, when the clouds block the sunlight, and as it turns to nighttime, the landscape also does literally change with it. You can see here how the shadows fall. They are prominent under certain conditions. And this is how it looks in the evening during the opening with indoor lighting. Whatever you see depends on the environmental elements, as you know, people walk by here and there. We really do hope that this would inspire you to see the possibilities for such landscapes, whether it's a mountainscape or really anything nature to enter your home or any kind of space, so that you can have art that is also functional when you use it as things like partitions or sliding doors. The way that it intervenes with light in the space, it comes alive. It has the power to create a mood and emotion of serenity in any space. And this is what we really feel for in glass. So at Synergraphic, we remain passionate about this medium for 35 years now, from installations for commercial and hospitality projects all the way to small items like furniture and gifts. Nothing is too small for us, really, and we love exploring new ideas with you. How we approach what we do is that we view materials as our paints and techniques as our paintbrushes. And we enjoy combining both these traditional techniques with modern technology to discover new possibilities. And we really like to, push the boundaries of this medium and find new ways of doing things. So in terms of techniques, here you see, very broadly speaking, how we categorize our techniques: hot working, warm working, cold working. And modern technology will be things like printing, which allows for a lot more possibilities today. So this is what we go to whenever we think of what we'd like to create. So what is the result is that in a single building, you can actually create glass features in every space imaginable, whether it's your home, office, hospitality areas, public areas, from windows to even signages, water features that are outdoor, indoor, lighting, small items. And I hope that, this would inspire you to imagining even more. How would it be possible to create something like this into glass? It is possible, and probably our imagination is our limitation. So I hope that by now you'll agree with me that the possibilities with glass are really endless. And this means that there's going to be a lot more options for your designs, no matter what space you're talking about. But to simplify things, I thought maybe it would be good to use the home space, since we're all spending so much time at home. That's why there's not many people here physically. Yeah, so here we have the home space. In every home space, you have opportunities for feature walls, backsplashes, lighting, bathroom, dividers, and your doors. So I'm gonna bring you through some ready solutions that you can turn to as a starting point. So for your feature walls, there are earth tails, chinoiserie, lamy art options. For kitchen backsplashes, instead of real marble, you can use glass, and I will talk a bit more about this particular range later. Peranakan collection, so these are digital print graphics that you can use. Bathrooms, using pattern glass or even antique mirror tiles. Dividers, with metal work to turn it into interesting privacy screens. lots of lami-art options, gradient mirrors, and pattern glass. Doors, not just for your living room area, but also your wardrobes, which we find are very popular today. You can use pattern glass, but also lami-art options. And for lighting, very important for every home, this is where your visitors will come and spend time. So we've done quite a number of customized lighting features over the years, and we are happy to do so. Okay, now this is going to be some products, because now we're spending so much time at home, we're also looking at having writable walls, not just in the office, but at home. So here is a Bianca board, which is basically a 3-in-1. You can even project on it, you can write on it, and it is also a magnetic surface. So if you're interested in things like that, I mean, please feel free to speak to us at any time. Okay, Upsells Volume 2 is a new range that we launched last year. This is where you can find an amazing selection of beautiful stone and glass for a wide variety of applications. So I think the pictures speak for itself, but we in summary, we have more than, I think we have 63 designs from this range of 3 different subcategories: Italian, French, and Greek. So depending on how loud or subtle you want your design to be. But with this range, basically you get the beauty of stone and the benefits of glass. Firstly is that it's going to be very lightweight, unlike stone, which often is very heavy. It's able to let light through. It's non-porous because of the material of glass, which means that it's going to be very good for your wet areas like your bathrooms. And when you look at the full graphic available to you, you can actually select the exact stone grain that you are interested in, so that you can control how the whole panel looks. And I think this is quite important, especially for feature areas where you would like to also show your client how the exact stone is going to look like. So that's Tales Volume 2. Snowberry collection is just really a range of different colors of nature gradients that you can use either as fully two-way view, doors or dividers, or if it's going to be mounted on a wall, it can be laminated with a mirror backing so that it has this, like what you see, a more reflective surface. And that is actually for South Beach residences that we had done before. And antique mirrors. So if your theme is in this direction, then of course you have this whole range. Antique mirrors come from Italy. So you'll find that their color scheme and their patterns are very unique. We also have our own antique mirrors now, which are more bronzy and have a more like plainer grain, because sometimes you don't want your texture to be very busy. And for pattern glass, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with. So just come and find out what stock we have. And for lami-art, we are always expanding our range, testing with new substrates. But basically, if you're not familiar with this, it is 2 pieces of glass that you laminate with different substrates. What's very popular now is metal mesh. And that is one of the sub-ranges that we have. But otherwise, it's fabrics or even veneers that you can use as well. These are more artisanal spectrum of our offerings: gilded glass, artisanal antique mirrors, like what I mentioned earlier. This is an example of a fully customized graphic, chinoiserie graphic, developed from Macau Theme Park Resort in Macau. And then we also have glass elements. So everything you saw earlier are finishes. So generally they are flat glass panels, but we also have glass elements, whether they are stacked glass, and you can see even in this area, there are many different profiles, many different edging, which you can use to create forms. Glass bricks, whether they have a more organic kind of texture or they are highly polished and whatever color, or some are hand faceted. These are all possible. They are fully customizable. And this example is what we had done in 2007 for Taipei 101. This is called the Partners Monument. It's located in the public area. Colored glass bricks. The frame was also designed by us to house the lighting that would be meant to be easily maintained and replaced. So glass balls, not completely spherical like what you see, but also kind of like hemispherical for City of Dreams, Macau, and each sphere was treated differently. Some were fully mirrored, some were lightly frosted, so that when it is created on the overall view, it looks like it's always moving and it's always different from whichever angle you're looking at. Beveled glass to form an overall wall feature. And yeah, actually, I've just covered our some of our favorite techniques, some ways to explore different glass techniques to create a design, and some simple solutions that you can start to use. But what we really want to share with you is that we are here to journey with you. Our team of artists, craftsmen, project managers, salespeople, of course. We are here to journey with you. If you're just looking for things like finishes, elements, and functional art, like what I had shown earlier, we will point you in the right direction. You are welcome to come and visit our little showroom as well. That's in Changi, but we can always do Zoom meeting if it's easier. And sometimes if you're looking for something a bit more special, like a customized feature wall or a feature lighting, or you just have a question about how something could be done, we are always happy to have that conversation with you. We'll explore from the concept stage to the design. Sometimes it doesn't have to be using glass as a material all the time, even though that is our specialty, but it's really about understanding the brief and how we can make it happen. And we also do it all the way until the installation stage. So just to end, I think I've spoken for about 25 minutes, and then I'll be happy to open the floor for questions. But just to end, I think what we really like to say about glass is that glass is a material that is ancient, as I had shown you, but as we can see that there is still so much technologies being developed to work with the material, things like Gorilla Glass, bulletproof glass, and there will continue to be investment in such research and technology to create even new possibilities for not just the function, but also for art. And this means that glass, as ancient as it is, continues to be a very modern material for us as artists and designers to use. So I hope that you are inspired and that you'll come alongside us in continuing this journey of art and design in glass. Yeah, thank you. Okay, all right, I received a question from Johnston, and just let me have a read. Okay. So I'll read the question. First question is, for some of the earlier examples shown, like Misty Willow and Kasumi Shizuku, with a combination of techniques, why is sandblasting preferred over acid etched? So acid etching, okay, so sandblasting is where you use sand and you blast it out through a high pressure nozzle to carve or to lightly blast away at a glass panel. Whereas acid etch, you have to use acid to pour over and that would etch the glass. So in Singapore, there isn't any company that does acid etching because of very stringent regulations that don't really allow for the use of acid because it's very harmful to the environment and to health. So that would mean that we are not able to play with it, I guess. And so the only way to create then a frosted effect or any kind of carving, then sandblasting would be the only technique that we have at our disposal to use. But whenever we offer acid etched glass, whether they have patterns or whether they are just plain acid etched glass, these materials, raw materials, are imported, and they can be imported from different countries like China, or traditionally Europe, US. And the next question that you had was, could you tell us more about heat-soaked glass? Is it really better than tempered glass? And is it worth extra cost? Tempered glass had always been the like default measure for safety glass, and it was a little bit more recently that heat-soaked glass came about as a requirement. So how shall I say this? It is just a measure of added safety in response to certain observations of incidences in how like glass have had spontaneous breakages and things like that. But I would say that despite, like, no matter which you go for, there will always be that minute percentage where there still will be that spontaneous glass breakage. So there isn't really like a perfect rule that we can depend on. I'm sorry if that doesn't really quite answer the question, but we can provide maybe more like a statement that provides more information, if that would help. Yeah, for this particular question.
Yeah, also, I see Christian, he raised his hand, so I try and allow him to talk.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Chris, you can speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to. I actually saw the sphere glass and for decoration on the wall. Do you come in dome shape?
Sorry, you asking again?
Referring to those glass sphere, the balls, okay, that is decorated on the wall. So I'm actually looking at dome, semicircle dome, the small. What are the size available? I mean, of course, do you have in dome shape rather than just the full ball, the full sphere?
Whether you have them in dome shapes rather than the full ball, and what the sizes available.
That was the question. Yeah, so sorry, I couldn't hear the question from where I'm standing. The question was dome shape, right? Yes. It is definitely available and possible, but we need to understand like the size, because there may be some limitations. But yeah.
What are the size available?
Sizes available.
Oh, what are the sizes?
You can send me by email next time.
For sizes available, please let me check if I could take down your contact. Then
I'll pass you his email
separately. Yeah.
Okay, regards about the sandblasting. I do a lot of glass panel design in my projects. So I understand that regards to acid being controlled by our authorities, to the environment. When it comes to sandblast, right? My design will require to show a lot of depths of view, such as in different layers of sandblasting using a masking stacks, plus using light glows for the finishing panels at the bottom. Two questions. What should I look out for if I would like to create more 3D and of course, what kind of thickness that will be better to use, the thickness of the glass to use for such 3D sandblasting. Second question is it able to using a low iron glass, which is nicknamed crystal glass?
Okay. I'm not sure if I managed to catch your entire question, but I will answer what I've heard. Choice of glass, whether your regular clear glass or low iron or what you can call crystal clear glass, both are definitely no difference in terms of usability for sand carving. It really depends on the client's requirements as well, or the intention of the design, because sometimes the green is what is desired. So for example, like the bamboo one, in the office space, for example, the green is what looks natural. It presents the natural green found in the space, especially if it's in a like a spa or resort kind of space. So green is fine. It doesn't mean that it looks nicer or better. It's just the preferred choice. And then for low iron, that was what we used for Gardens by the Bay, because the client wanted it to be very white. That was he already knew that he wanted it to be very, very white. So that's why low iron was used. And then you were asking about thickness of glass. For thickness, actually the general rule of thumb is first we always need to look at what is the size of the panel, so that, and also the application. If it's a partition, then you can make do with a single panel tempered. But if it is to be used as a door, then depending on the configuration or the design, it might be safer to have it laminated. So we always need to ask what the applications are. And then you are also asking about how to get more depth. So imagine if you have a single panel of glass where you do all your sand carving, let's say it's a 8 mm or even 10 mm. It means that you, with a thicker panel of glass, you can carve a bit deeper. So you will kind of be able to see a bit more depth in that single technique, single panel. But then that would still be just a single panel. So there's kind of like only so much depth that you can create. But a lot of what you saw when we started to combine with other techniques, they were also laminated. So when you laminate glass, and if it's a divider, technically you have 4 surfaces that you can work with to break your graphic into different panels and layers. So once you have 4 layers, then that's when you can start to play around with it. And then it's really all in the graphics, actually, and breaking up into sections. And then sometimes you still need to have a light layer of frost to bring out, make it a bit more visible, depending on where it is installed. So if you are interested, you can always get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to explore more. Actually, the main thing is that you really need to test and to see the materials in order to see what the result is as you design it. Yeah, so we're happy to work that out with you. Yeah. Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. Okay, I see some other questions. Maybe know your insights in using low E glass. I'm afraid I am not the expert when it comes to the facade, glass used for facade. So I would be happy to direct this question to my other colleagues who can answer answer you on this, so I can take down your question. Thank you. And the next question is, what is the maximum length and width for glass paneling on a wall? Glass sheets come in very, very large sizes these days. So it's not so much a question of what the glass sheet size is, but also what is the technique being used. Because if it's going to be a printed glass panel, then we'll be limited by the size of the printing machine. And depending on what printing size machine, it can be 1.2 by 2.4, it can be 2 by 3 meters. So it really depends on what printing type you're talking about as well. And then the other consideration factors are the site accessibility to determine what would be the max size that we are able to bring in. But in general, you know, especially for glass facades these days, the panels are really, really, really huge. So it's more of like these other factors that we'll have to consider, and that's why we often ask a lot of questions in terms of the application before we can confirm the answer. But otherwise, if you're talking about sometimes like standard stock sizes of like pattern glass that are imported, those are standard like 1.8 by 2.4, but they are also larger depending on like the reader glass. If they come from Europe, they can be bigger. Or antique mirrors, or even SIH glass. Yeah, some of these are more standard sizes that we're talking about. Yep, I hope that answers your question. Okay, and then the next question is, how long will it take to complete the colorful pendant light that you did before, and was it on an indent basis? So there were two that we presented. One is more toury, the other one has more like flowers and buds. Those maybe, or generally speaking, it would take around 2 months, 2 to 3 months, because we have some stock with us. So when we receive a commission to create a lighting piece, we first will understand what is your first we need to understand the size of the space to determine the overall size of the lighting piece. And then we will work with you to get some reference images, what kind of color scheme that you're looking at, and then we'll look at what we may have in stock that we could assemble together, and that's where my creative director would come in to work on this for you. And the metal structure is also designed and fabricated by us all the way to installation, delivery and installation. So I think it's usually the design time that would take a while, and then the fabrication, depending on whether we have some of the components in stock or not, that also would vary from as quick as 1.5 months to longer if we have to invent some of those additional components or elements. Yeah, so what will usually happen is once we understand your timeline, then we'll also shortlist for you which would be the better direction and how we can kind of do like certain workarounds to still get the effect that you want. Yes, hope that answers the question. Well, I think there may not be any more questions. If you are shy now, it's okay. We are very friendly and we are always welcoming you to where we are located at Changi. And I think just to end, what we've presented, I feel is really just the tip of the iceberg. Once we start going into a particular design direction or exploration, there are many sub-techniques to investigate. And so it really requires time to sit down together and to go through the process from concept to prototyping and to the final installation. But of course, please remember we have ready-made materials and solutions. Everything doesn't have to be so complicated. And you know, we've been doing our best to make it a lot more accessible and easier for you through a revamped website. So I would encourage you to visit our website, and you would just look for the search bar, which should be easy to find. You shouldn't have to search for the search bar, and then you can easily type in what you're looking for. And we've done a lot of filters so that you can easily find what you're looking for. But if you still cannot find what you're looking for, please send us your feedback, because it's a continuous effort to improve our website, and we're really working in many other fronts on the back end to also improve how we can help you to navigate and to find what you want. So we hope to be able to engage more with you. This is really the beginning, even though we've been here for 35 years, but then better late than never. So please come over and say hi, and I hope to see you in person sooner rather than later. If no other words, no other questions, I think we can bring this session to an end. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good day ahead.